A lot of modern cars feel great when you first drive them. The steering feels tight, the cabin feels quiet, and the power comes in smooth. That is the trap. The first owner may love the thing for 70,000 or even 90,000 miles. Then the second owner shows up. The odometer crosses 120,000, and suddenly the car that felt smart starts acting expensive. In this video, we are talking about 7 reliable cars that become expensive nightmares after 120 miles. We are not just talking about bad cars here. We are talking about cars that seem sorted early, then slowly turn into money pits once the wear stacks up. That is when cheap ownership becomes a lie. Why this happens now? This happens because modern cars are built to feel better early, not always to age better later. Newer engines make more power from less size, new transmissions keep the RPM low, and software hides a lot of ugly behavior before the parts are truly worn out. For the first 80,000 miles, that can feel amazing. The car is quiet, the fuel economy looks strong, and the owner thinks they made a smart buy. But after 120,000 miles, the small weaknesses stop arriving one at a time. They start piling up together. Turbo heat starts cooking seals. Direct injection starts making carbon and injector trouble more serious. Timing chains stretch, tensioners wear, coolant passages fail, CVTs lose their smooth magic, and plastic cooling parts get brittle. That is why some newer cars feel fine in the first chapter, then become painful in the second. Older versions of the same cars often felt rougher, slower, and a little less polished. But they aged more honestly because the parts were simpler, the heat load was lower, and the whole car asked less from itself every single day. Number 7. Ford Fusion. Here is the first one that fools a lot of good buyers. The 2017 to 2019 Ford Fusion with the 1.5 EcoBoost looks like a calm grown-up sedan. It rides nicely, the cabin feels modern enough, and on a quick drive, it does not scream problem. That is exactly why people get burned. Ford issued bulletins and a customer program tied to coolant intrusion on certain 1.5-liter EcoBoost cars, including Fusion. And that is the kind of issue that turns a normal used sedan into an engine bill once the car is older and outside the repair window. The symptoms are ugly: low coolant, white smoke, misfires, rough starts. Then the owner finds out this is not a small leak story. It can become an engine story. That is what makes this Fusion such a nasty long-mile trap. The newer car feels smoother and more polished than the older Fusion. But the older 2010 to 2012 Fusion with the naturally aspirated 2.5 is still the one I would trust for a simple long-term commuter. It gives up some shine, sure, but it does not carry the same heat-loaded gamble. Right now, late Fusion pricing still looks tempting, which is part of the danger. Current used market prices for land range from $7,500 to about $13,000, depending on year, trim, and miles. And 100,000-mile cars often sit in the low 10,000s. That sounds safe until one hidden coolant problem turns the whole math upside down. If you want a Fusion that behaves like a normal sedan past 120,000 miles, the older 2.5 is the smarter bet. And if you think this is painful, the next car hurts even more because people trust the badge before they check the transmission. If this kind of mileage-based buying logic helps you avoid big repair bills, subscribe. We are here to save you from cheap cars that become costly mistakes later. Number 6. Subaru Legacy. The 2015 to 2019 Subaru Legacy 2.5 with the Lineartronic CVT is the kind of car people call safe, smart, and winter-ready. And that is why this one stings when it gets expensive. Subaru buyers trust these cars because the all-wheel drive works, the seats are comfortable enough, and the whole thing feels polished compared with older Subarus. That trust is exactly what makes the long-mile gamble easy to miss. Subaru extended CVT coverage on certain earlier Legacy and Outback models to 10 years or 100,000 miles, and that matters because it tells you where the pressure point lives. Once a newer Legacy is well past that range, you are the one holding the risk. And CVT trouble is rarely a fun small repair. It is the kind of issue that changes the whole ownership equation in a hurry. The newer Legacy feels smoother than the older 6-cylinder cars, and it is easier on gas, but the older Legacy 3.6R, with the conventional automatic, aged more like a traditional sedan. It was heavier, thirstier, and less trendy, but it did not ask you to trust the same long-mile CVT story. On top of that, these newer Legacy years can pile on smaller, annoying problems that wear owners down, like park range switch issues, parking brake software concerns, odd low-speed CVT behavior, and infotainment glitches that make a nice, sensible sedan feel less simple than it should. That is the whole point of this list. Newer does not always mean better after 120,000 miles. Current Legacy pricing still looks attractive too. A 2015 to 2019 car can sit anywhere from about $8,500 to around $19,000, depending on year, trim, and mileage, with higher mileage 2.5 cars usually in the mid-teens or lower. That sounds reasonable until transmission risk enters the chat. If someone wants an older Legacy, they can run hard into the future. I still trust the older 3.6R logic more. It is not as slick, but it feels more honest once the miles get serious. Number 5. Nissan Altima. The 2019 to 2022 Nissan Altima is one of those cars that feels rational, polished, and modern when you first drive it. The seat is comfortable, the ride is smooth, and the 2.5-liter four-cylinder feels normal. Buyers see a clean sedan with solid fuel economy, quiet road manners, and a price that looks fair, so they assume the long-term story must be the same. It is not. Once mileage piles up, the CVT becomes the whole conversation, and that changes the ownership math in a hurry. Nissan already had to extend CVT coverage on Altima applications to 84 months or 84,000 miles, and that matters because it tells you exactly where the weak point lives. Past 120,000 miles, that extra coverage is gone, and the second owner holds the danger. That is why this generation can feel better early but scarier later. The current shape Altima rides better than the older car, looks sharper, and gives you a calmer highway feel, but smooth commuting is not the same thing as long-mile durability. CVT judder, valve body trouble, heat wear, delayed response, and that rubber band feeling under load can turn a sensible sedan into a costly headache. The car may feel silent on a short test drive, then start acting strange once everything is hot and worn. And compared with the older pre-CVT Altima years, especially the conventional automatic cars, this newer one is simply less straightforward once real age enters the picture. Those older cars were rougher, thirstier, and less refined, but the mechanical story was easier to read. Right now, the 2019 to 2022 Altima still looks tempting in the used market, usually around $9,000 to $18,000, depending on trim and mileage. Higher mileage 2019 cars often sit in the low teens, while cleaner later cars reach the high teens. That looks like smart money until the transmission starts writing checks that the rest of the car cannot cash. Cheap monthly ownership and cheap lifetime ownership are not the same thing. Subscribe for smarter, longer, lower drama buying advice before these smooth deals turn costly. Number 4. Hyundai Sonata. The 2015 to 2019 Hyundai Sonata, with the 2.4 or the 2.0 turbo. Theta 2 is one of the most dangerous value buys on the used market because it often feels normal, quiet, and easy to justify. The cabin is roomy enough, the ride is soft enough, and the price usually looks a lot better than an Accord or Camry sitting beside it. That is exactly how people get trapped. Hyundai issued a warranty extension material tied to connecting rod-bearing wear and engine damage on certain Theta 2 applications, including Sonata, and that turns this from a simple used sedan story into a paperwork story, a campaign history story, and sometimes a replacement engine story. That is a brutal thing to discover after you already bought the car because the monthly payment looked comfortable. A short drive will not tell you plenty. The car can feel smooth, stable, and completely normal right up until the engine history catches up with it. This is usually a delayed disaster, and delayed trouble burns second owners the worst. The older port-injected V6 Sonata era was not as efficient, not as modern, and not as pretty inside, but the failure pattern was easier to understand. You bought more fuel burn, more age, and less glamour, but you were not stepping into the same kind of murky engine campaign fog. With the 2015 to 2019 cars, service history matters more than almost anything else. Was the knock sensor update done? Was the inspection done? Was the engine replaced? Does the seller actually know? Those questions matter more than how silent the cabin feels. Current non-hybrid pricing still makes these cars look like a bargain, roughly $8,500 to $13,000 for many normal examples, with average 2018 pricing around the low 12,000s. That looks attractive until one appealing payment hides an engine story that is messy, fragile, and wildly expensive to untangle. Number 3. Honda Accord. This is where people get defensive because the 2018 to 2022 Honda Accord has a strong reputation. The cabin feels upscale, the steering is sharp, the 1.5 turbo feels torquey in everyday traffic, and the whole car gives off that classic Honda feeling of being dialed in. But if the theme is good early and expensive later, the 1.5 turbo Accord absolutely belongs here. Honda has service information tied to fuel injector issues on 1.5 turbo cars, and there is also service information around head gasket coolant leak conditions on this engine family. That does not mean every Accord is doomed. It means the long mileage risk on this version is very different from the older naturally aspirated Accord that built Honda's older reputation in the first place. They shop the badge, not the powertrain. The 2013 to 2017 Accord with the 2.4 gave up some turbo punch and some newer tech appeal, but it aged like a more traditional Honda. It asked less from its cooling system, less from its injectors, and less from every heat-soaked part under the hood. The newer one feels more modern and more impressive when it is fresh, but direct injection, a small turbo, and a CVT change the ownership equation. Once you are the guy dealing with age instead of warranty. And because it is an Accord, the price never drops enough to make the gamble feel generous. Current used pricing for 2018 to 2022 Accords usually lands around $17,500 to $23,000, with 100,000-mile cars still sitting in the high teens. That means the second owner is not just taking on a more fragile powertrain, he is paying a premium to do it. Buyers still trust the name, but the older 2.4 is still the one long-mile shoppers trust more. It is not flashier. It is just more honest when the mileage gets serious. This channel is for people who actually keep cars. Subscribe for calmer, smarter, long-mile buying rules before a shiny test drive turns into serious regret. Number 2. Toyota Prius. The 2010 to 2015 Prius is the perfect example of a car that fools people with its image. People hear Prius and think reliable, frugal, and almost bulletproof, so they stop asking hard questions. Early on, that faith feels justified. A Gen 3 Prius is quiet enough, roomy enough, and incredibly cheap to fuel, with fuel economy commonly in the upper 40s to low 50s miles per gallon, depending on trim and conditions. That kind of savings makes owners forgive a lot. The problem is that the Gen 3 has a very different aging story from the older Gen 2. Toyota issued service bulletins and warranty enhancement material tied to oil consumption on certain 2010 to 2014 Prius family cars, including redesigned pistons and rings, and this is also the generation most buyers connect with EGR clogging and the ugly head gasket conversation once mileage gets serious. That is where the trap starts. The car feels so smart, clean, and inexpensive to run that people ignore what is building underneath. Then the cold starts get rough, coolant starts disappearing, oil use gets harder to ignore, and suddenly the savings from years of cheap fill-ups get swallowed by engine work. That is why I still compare it directly to the older 2004 to 2009 Gen 2 Prius. The older car was slower, noisier, and less polished, but it often aged with fewer of these same engine-side headaches. Right now, Gen 3 pricing still looks inviting, usually around $6,000 to $14,900, depending on mileage, trim, and condition, with rough, high-mile cars sitting in the single digits. That sounds like an easy hybrid win. But for buyers who want a Toyota hybrid to keep forever, the older Gen 2 is often the calmer, safer play, even if the newer car feels more refined. Number 1. BMW 320i. The 2012 to 2016 BMW 320e die with the turbocharged N20 is the clearest example of a car that feels amazing early, then turns vicious once age and mileage catch up. On a test drive, this thing is brilliant. The steering feels tight, the chassis feels light, the cabin feels upscale, and the Turbo 4 gives the car a quick, smooth punch that makes it seem like a used luxury steal. That is exactly how people get trapped. BMW issued timing chain and oil pump drive chain warranty extensions on N20 and N26 engines. And that is the kind of defect story that should make every long-mile buyer stop pretending the low asking price is the whole picture. Once the car is outside coverage, the badge discount becomes a wallet trap. This newer 320i drives better than the older E90 car in a lot of ways. It feels more modern, more efficient, and more polished. But compare it honestly with the 2006 to 2011 E90 320i with the naturally aspirated N52 inline-6, and the older car tells a much honester ownership story. The N52 car was not perfect, but it did not ask owners to gamble on the same timing chain drama while also pretending to be the bargain of the century. That is why the older six-cylinder car still makes more sense for enthusiasts who plan to own the thing past 120,000 miles. Pricing is what makes the newer one so dangerous. A 2012 to 2016 320i can look tempting from roughly $6,000 to $14,000. And 120,000-mile sedans commonly sit in the $7,000 to $9,000 zone. That is precisely where buyers lose discipline. They see BMW, leather, prestige, and a low monthly payment. What they should see is a modern German sedan with a known chain story, a turbo engine, and repair costs that can get savage in a hurry. Buyer takeaway: do not shop by reputation alone. Shop by failure pattern, powertrain type, and whether the older version of the same car was mechanically simpler. Small turbo plus coolant loss should scare you. Direct injection plus misfire history should scare you. CVT plus slipping, delay, or heat soak should scare you. Hybrid plus oil use, rough cold starts, and coolant loss should scare you. Premium badge plus a suspiciously cheap asking price should really scare you. That is the whole argument of this video. Many newer cars feel quieter, quicker, and more impressive in the first chapter. But the older versions often aged more honestly, because they asked less from the engine, less from the cooling system, and less from the transmission. Buy the simpler version when the simpler version exists. And when a car seems cheap for what it is, ask yourself whether the market is missing value or warning you about painful ownership math. Always check service records, cooling history, transmission behavior, and whether the seller explains the known issue. If the older version gave up some screens, mileage, or speed but kept a simpler drivetrain, the trade is usually wiser, cheaper, and safer. Click the next video, because these are not the only modern cars that age badly. The next list shows the models buyers still overpay for, even after the warning signs get obvious.